Successful Minds with Patricia Barnowski-Schneider, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant people on the planet. Hear their stories and get the most important business lessons they have learned on their road to success and get exclusive advice on how to implement their success into your life and business. Successful Minds with Patricia Barnowski-Schneider is brought to you by the Strategic Advisor Board and your host, Patricia Barnowski-Schneider.
Hello, and welcome back to Successful Minds. I'm your host, Patty Baranowski-Schneider. Today, I'm joined by Frances Helena, author, writer, speaker, and model who advocates for community social issues. There's a lot going on, so I'm going to leave it to her to tell you more. So thank you for joining us, Frances, and tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Thanks, Miss Patricia. Hi, everybody. So I'm Frances, and I'm actually based in Australia. You might hear some birds. They're kind of noisy, but they always wake up this really early, so they're going to go on for a while. I'm actually also a fashion designer as well as author, model. I do like a lot of stuff. I'm a travel blogger, but recently in the last year, we've actually created our own fashion brand. It's called Beautifully Diverse Fashion, and it's basically about bringing people together from all different parts of the world, regardless of their experience in the fashion industry, their age, and what they look like. And we just did New York Fashion Week in February, and we did Philadelphia as well for Black History Month. So now we've got an age range from 13 to 64.
Very nice. Now, can you share with us the story behind the name of your brand, Beautiful Diverse, and how your experiences across 3 continents influenced its creation?
So I grew up traveling as a kid. I was actually adopted into my family. And so I've been very blessed. We managed to live and travel all over the world, places like we lived in Mexico, lived in China, Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, and now obviously Australia. And there's a whole list of everything. And so I pretty much have been traveling since before I could walk. So it was pretty much like beauty is defined in so many different ways, and there's no right or wrong answer. And in the fashion industry, obviously we just see certain people, certain looks, or a certain way that you should be. But the way we've created the brand is basically to say that beauty comes in all shapes and sizes, different ages, and we didn't put a criteria on modeling, casting things. So we just basically let anybody come in and we teach them. And we even had people from America's Next Top Model. They found us. And so, so it's pretty much we want people's experiences in life to connect with other people and to really, and I feel like people's experiences are about how you learn from other people. There's always a way to learn something new, regardless if it's in the modeling industry or, whatever industry you're in, there's always a way to learn from other people.
Yeah, that's cool that you take such a wide variety of people and backgrounds and all that, because I always say how, like, years and years ago, I won't age myself, but years ago I was into modeling. And I remember I was 5'9", 5'9.5". I weighed 135 pounds, which was thin, but they told me that I should focus on big women modeling, that I was too big. And it's like, wow. So, I love the song about Victoria's Secret, where they say, I know Victoria's Secret, because, putting that branding on people, that's how people get anorexic. And, people need to know that beauty is not just if you're a stick figure who wears a size 0, so that's really, important. I'm glad that you, help advocate for that. Nice. Now, as a community.
Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, as a community activist, who's helped put legislation through? Can you talk about a particular piece of legislation that you're proud to have been a part of and how it's impacted the community?
Sure. This goes back to the start of the pandemic, where in Australia, so I live in a small town where it's probably got 1 university and 3 major shopping centers. Like, that's it. And so it's in the country. And so we always get a lot of international students, and obviously the whole world was just shutting down. And, a lot of people were coming, they always come to study, especially, from all over the world. We do get a lot of American people too. They come for marine biology because of the Great Barrier Reef. Nice. And so the way this came about was when everything was shutting down, I was like, well, what else can we do? Like, there's nothing to do. Like, and everybody started going online. And I've always been a creator in like just anything really, like creating videos. And so I just started posting videos because things were happening in the news about, should we send international students home? Can they go home? And that was the issue, right? Because people just couldn't get home. They were trying to get home and you couldn't. You had to divert to some other place, or that area was closed. And so someone from, it's called the Council of International Students Australia, called CISA, and they found me. He was at the time the head of this council. They found me and just saw like my reels. You just post stuff sometimes, right? You got no idea where it goes or where it reaches.
Right.
And so we became really good friends, and then we were trying to figure out ways to get funding, because the Australian government was providing funding to Australian citizens. And obviously, if you're not a citizen, you don't get anything. But then, things it was all still new. Everybody just didn't know what to do. So me and this person and a few other people that they worked with, we were thinking of ways what to do. And so they were already planning this to pitch it to the government to provide financial support for international students. So I know a lot of people and in the community, not just at the university, but outside. So, and then we basically just started talking to different people, organizations, and, tried to get their support. And then we managed to put it through, I think, about 6 states. So, and we've only got 7 states in Australia. So, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, how do you manage to juggle between being a community activist, a travel writer, and running a fashion business? Do you have any tips for our listeners on managing multiple passions?
I think for me, because I get bored easily. So if I'm kind of like, I've had enough of like writing for, an hour or whatever it may be, and then I move on to something else. But I think it's also being a creative and an entrepreneur, you can never really go wrong. And, I think that's the thing about being an entrepreneur. It's not just one avenue. If you have talent in so many different things, you can use that and use those methods to make money, because a lot of the times we focus on either a 9-to-5 job, of course we still have to pay bills and things like that, but we have other talents that we don't realize or we don't utilize. And so for me, who's always been a creative, it was just things that now seem to just be balancing out between each other. So the whole fashion and traveling thing now, with the fashion, we've been starting to get known all over the world. So we're, started going traveling again, and it's picked up a lot everywhere. And so, now it's something you can write about, and it's now becoming a thing where people are starting to get out of the house, go places. And so that's how that came about. And then, I think I've also just been a community kind of person. Like where we lived, there was so many people that didn't speak English. So you had to, and this was going back before smartphones came out, they were just starting to come out. And so, you had to talk to the person. Otherwise you just couldn't survive, because there was, you just had to figure it out. And so, I think with people, if you know that you've got that sort of talent in different areas, just try a little bit. It doesn't have to be a big step, but just try a little bit in each area, and then, decide. You don't have to decide, but you can just balance it out, write a schedule, whatever you feel like doing, and just work your way from there.
Right. And like you said, even with the activism, I mean, you were just posting stuff and somebody, was right place at the right time. Somebody saw it and approached you. So, sometimes that's all it takes. So go for it.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, your fashion brand has a unique approach by using recycled fabrics. So what inspired you to choose sustainability as a core value in your business?
I think it was just, after the pandemic, I feel like a lot of businesses changed. We saw the results of, less pollution. We saw the results of, clean air, whatever it may be. But we saw the effect of just being shut down for, that many years, what the effect it was actually having. So I feel like a lot of people took that time to really just think about what they wanted to do, what they wanted to make that comeback. And for me, it was actually because I didn't have a lot of money. So it was basically like, I was like, well, what am I going to do? How am I even going to make all this happen? And so it was just basically me taking, used items that people wear, and, they didn't want them anymore. So we changed it up. Restyled it. And then I also watched a lot of like tutorials on YouTube. So it was just like, oh, well, you can just make simple things like hair scrunchies. A friend of mine, she actually was one of the people who actually got me back into sewing, because I got another friend. She gave me a sewing machine during the pandemic, or actually just before the pandemic, for my birthday. I'd never touched it. And it wasn't until the pandemic we were trying to think of ways to make money or ways to just do something,
Right.
So it was like this other friend taught me how to make scrunchies. And then from there, I just kind of just started watching things on YouTube and just recreated it. Yeah.
Right. Nice. I know, it's funny. I always say YouTube, it has an answer for everything. Anytime, even with my husband, he's trying to fix something, there's a YouTube video that's right. It's just insane. But that's awesome that you were creative, and it was amazing to see, like you said, with the pandemic, with no planes flying, nobody driving, they were saying, I think, the whales and everything with the dolphins, they were back in the water because they're normally scattered. The air quality, if anything, it was an eye opener for a lot of people. So that's amazing. Now, can you tell us about a memorable travel experience that directly influenced one of your fashion designs or collections?
A charity experience, you said?
No, a memorable travel experience. Traveling.
Memorable travel. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
I think,
But hey, if you have a charity experience, you can talk about that too.
Yeah, I think it's just I think we've had so many like memorial, like memorable experiences. And I think the biggest thing about it is that it's really, what we do with our brand is really bringing people together that you don't know. So,
Right.
And with New York Fashion Week, we had about 10 people. They never ever met each other at all. They had never seen each other before. So,
Nice.
and we had started talking on Zoom. And so, it was just things like that. There's so many different ways to connect with people, regardless of where they look like and where they come from. And I think, when we traveled as a kid, and, this was going back when you had to, you had maps, but it wasn't Google Map. It was an actual
Right.
book you had to pull over on the side of the
Right.
road to figure out where you're going. But it was things like that. I think just, I think, where were we? I think we were driving. Oh, we would drive. So in Asia, going to different countries, it's not that far. It's maybe like, I think we drove from when we lived in Malaysia, was from Malaysia to Singapore, and we go on the weekends, which is about 3 hour drive. Obviously, you got to cross the border. So, and I think there was something they stopped us or something happened, but I just remember, it was being sorted out, whether it was a language barrier, but there's so many different ways to communicate with people. And I think that's the best thing about what we do in our brand, is really about communicating with people, because there's no right or wrong answer. If I said you point right, you're going to point a different way. So,
Right.
it's always about just learning from other people. And I think that's the best thing about us having traveled and lived everywhere.
Nice. That's actually awesome that you were traveled around the world. So many people, myself included, only ventured so far. But really, we always said I grew up in Manhattan. It's a melting pot, people from around the world. And I just love meeting and, different people, learning their background, and we're all different. So, it's a big thing nowadays about including people, because so many people could say, oh, they're different from me, but learn about one another, because it's just, there's such a variety of people and backgrounds and, religions and customs. It's just fascinating to learn all about them. That's awesome that you included in your fashion. Now, in your shoe line, what kind of theme or values do you like to express through your designs? Are there any stories behind your favorite pieces?
I think so. I had this one outfit. I bought it from overseas during the pandemic. I did a lot of online shopping. So half of it, I didn't know if it fit me or anything. And then,
Right.
and half of it I kept. I was like, well, what am I going to do with all this? But there was a dress. The dress had like a hole in the middle. Obviously, it was for like people who like to show cleavage and all that. And I'm not very blessed in that area. So I was like, well, this is going to be, I'm like, well, what are we doing with this? So I kept the piece because it was a beautiful dress. And so then I decided to actually cut it and make it two pieces. So it was basically a skirt, and then I made it a jacket. And we ended up selling that in Philadelphia after our show for about $100 US. So,
Wow, nice.
but I think there's always been sort of different things. I think I had an owl, if I'm saying it right, an owl die. So my dad went to Vietnam when he lived there. And so, every time he come back, he would bring me something back. I was like, can you bring me something back? And in Vietnam, they have amazing silk. It's just the most softest thing you've seen. And at the time when he got it for me, I fit into it. But then, since then I kind of grew and all this sort of stuff. So it didn't fit me. And I was like, well, what am I going to do with this? So we actually kind of used it as a jacket for Runway 7 fashion. That was the production we did in New York. So we kind of just, but I think the coolest thing about, what we do, it's all about different fabrics. And just because some of the stuff that we've got is from different parts of the world. Right. So, you can really, show that to people that there's different kinds of fabric out there and, right. Different styles. So I think, that's been a really good thing about it.
Nice. I know you need that creativity, because not everybody sees things. My daughter was like that. Like she could just take whatever was in the closet and everybody would stop her and be like, that's amazing. But I would never even have thought to put that together, and that sounds like what you did. So, I mean, you just have that creative, which is awesome. Now, with your fashion brand being based on diversity, how do you ensure that you're being inclusive and representing different cultures respectively?
Well, I think I very so who did we have for New York Fashion Week? I spent a lot of time because I also recruit half of the people. So most of the people, when I said diverse, I really wanted it to be not just an age or color or body shape, but I really wanted it to be, in background. So we had a couple of people who actually one girl, a couple of people, they didn't, one person first language is definitely, actually two people, definitely not English. So I think they speak up to at least 3-4 languages and then English. And then, so I think it was interesting to see the communication between all the different people, because we did have, people whose first language was English. So it was interesting because we were in New York, and if people haven't been to New York, it's all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the streets. Yeah. But then you've got to describe which section you're in. So it could be like, I don't know, 34 and 7th Avenue, So it's basically the 34th Street and the 7th corner. So yeah. So my friend, she's from Ghana, and she flew there from Ghana, and she was staying with relatives. I said, oh, let's meet on this street. I said, okay. So we call her, we get to the street. I'm like, where are you? And and because she's from the country, and normally, I'm also from the Philippines as well. So in the country, we don't have streets, because the towns are small, so people just know where you are. Right. So I'm just like, she said 34th Street or something. And I'm like, okay, I'm like, where? She's like, I'm on 34th Street. I'm like, where? You know how long 34th Street is? Yeah. Which section? What is in front of you? But when we include people in the brand, it's not, about what they speak or, what religion they are. It's really about learning from those people. And for me, I'm also hearing impaired. So I also, share that with people, because sometimes people are like, oh, what kind of designer are we going to get? Is it someone just telling us to, what to do? So I decided to let the group pick what they want to wear, whether it fits or not. So in the future, we're hoping to make them like a free size for everybody. So we're still working on that. But I let everybody just pick what they wear and let them style it up, and they decide what they want to do and all that. And so they go, I let them have fun, because in the fashion industry, you're just told what to do and everything. So, and the reason why we didn't put a criteria on the casting or the age was just because, as a model myself, it was just like, from experience I had seen when I go to places, they'd be like, everybody can apply, but they just didn't have anything for, people like my size. They didn't have people, you had to be a certain height or something. And I was like, really? What's the point of saying if all can apply if, it's only for certain people? So that's the reason why we've become diverse and inclusive that way. Yeah.
Nice. I'm sure you put smiles on a lot of people, because it is true. Like, even, besides the modeling, getting the clothes, they're made for a specific type of person. Doesn't mean it applies to everybody, and it drives me nuts. Yeah, so that's nice that you're including such a diverse amount of material. Now, how do your side hustles, like creating items from recycled fabrics, complement your main fashion business, and what's your vision for them in the future?
I think it was really just because I was at university at the time when all this started. So it was like, didn't have money just to get, something simple, so it was just like, and I was also really skeptical. I was like, with the pandemic, a lot of people haven't been buying anything. They don't want to buy anything, inflation's come up. And so, it was really just something that just started really small. And even with New York Fashion Week, I was like, I've got no idea. And I mean, I heard about it, but it wasn't like a thing I saw myself doing until somebody said, apply. I'm like, what do you mean apply? So I applied, and then we got accepted out of like 4,000 people. And I was like, oh, okay, now what? We just got to roll with it. So, but I think it's also about making it look different, because I do a lot of research. So I go into the shop, I look at the prices, I see what sizes there are, and because we do have like heaps of fabric, I try to use it all. I've made some into bangles. I've got reversible hair bonnets, and we're actually taking some to the they call it the Cancer Council. So they put for the people who are battling cancer. So we're doing things like that. So,
awesome.
it's more, I think for me, it was just a fun thing to do, because there was nothing to do in the pandemic. So it was just like, well, let's find something to do. So, and then now I'm just stuck with it all, which has been good. It's been it's been 1 year, and it's just been one big roller coaster. And I'm like, I'm still learning all the time. So.
Just being accepted for Fashion Week, I mean, that's a huge accomplishment. I mean, I'm born and raised in New York, so I used to pass it by all the time, and it's not everybody gets in there. So that's actually a huge accomplishment. So good for you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because someone I knew said to me, because they live here and they were from Philadelphia. It's like, trust me, everybody tries to apply. So if you get it from the other side of the world, you're doing a pretty good job. I'm like, okay. But we've also created shoes. So I designed shoes, and we actually have a manufacturer in the Philippines, and they're hoping to go plant-based. So we're trying to go down that avenue, become more environmental friendly. So
nice. Oh, that's awesome. Now, as someone who's been successful in multiple areas, what advice would you give to young entrepreneurs who are hesitant to follow their diverse passion?
I think the hardest thing about our younger generation is that we're not patient enough. It's so different to like, because people always be like, the older generation don't know things. But the one thing they have is patience, because things were in black and white TV. You had to wait for, when you picked up the phone, it wasn't like, we just dial it. You had to wait for I remember having dial up, you had to wait for the other person to get off the, off the internet and then call. But, I think the biggest thing about us young people is that we always we want it now. And the hardest thing about an entrepreneur is that you have your moments where you're like, this is working. But then you'll have moments where you're like, it's not working. What do I do? Why is it not working? And, you just have to keep going. Like even this whole thing that we've created, some days I'm just like, I don't know, nothing's going on. Is it what's happening? And then some days I'm like, oh my God, it's working. Yay. Okay. And so you just have to keep going. Just try different ways. Just put it out there. It's kind of like, for example, I have a chicken. So my chicken, she loves to eat. and that's her goal, right? So her goal is to eat. Even if I'm not at the house to feed her, she'll go. She's the neighborhood chicken. Everybody knows her. So she goes to 3 other houses to eat, and that's still her goal. So, the route to your goal is still, it always changes, it diverts somewhere else, but your goal is still the same. So, I think if young people, if we just stick to, even older people, there's so many old people coming out as models, as, just doing everything. I think one of the boys that we had, he's in his 40s, and he's become a big actor since he did New York Fashion Week with us.
Nice.
And for him, even he said on his podcast, that's the oldest you can get, because a lot of the models, a lot of the models in the fashion industry, they're like college kids, they're in the early 20s, so there's no, and I think as in the last maybe few years or even longer, we've accepted that people of different ages can do anything, can achieve anything. And, I think, it's all in the mindset, but you also have to be surrounded with people who are cheering for you. And I think, we just have to just keep going. There's nothing that's stopping you. And, you only live once. I've, had a lot of friends that have passed away now, and they were 34, around that age, or, younger than that. And, they lost their battle to cancer, but, they never, stopped to think about, like, how to reach their goal. They just kept going, and they had fun. So, and that's the good thing. You have to have fun with what you're doing. If you're not having fun, then no, and you need to pick something else.
Yeah, no, it is true. I mean, we always have this talk about like your legacy, what do you do and what impact are you leaving for everybody? One, like you say, even if you're working a 9-to-5 job and you hate it, you still have to have something fun in your life, whether it be your family or whatever. And you are so right with the younger generation. Everything nowadays is instant gratification. They want instant results. It's like life is a process. It happens, but like you say, be patient. They would never survive how it was back then. So now, looking ahead, what's one dream project or collaboration that you'd love to accomplish through your brand, Beautiful Diverse? And how can our listeners support you in achieving that goal?
So we've been lucky. We've been really blessed to be able to have a lady sponsor us. She runs a disability service here in Brisbane, which is the city I'm in Australia. And she's actually been sponsoring all our fashion shows, because there's designer fees. So we've been pretty blessed in that way. But the one thing I always wanted to do was to also, I guess, create scholarships, to kind of put more things that give back to the community, but also, for young kids to go to college or school, whatever it may be. But I also wanted to create it like a makeup brand and things like that. And to, and now it changes so many times. I mean, now you can get vegan makeup and all this sorts of stuff, all these different things. But, just, I like to have a lot of fun. So, it's just all about experimenting. But I think, yeah, definitely about creating scholarships. That was something I was always pretty big on, especially, having been born in a third world country. I couldn't imagine, well, I mean, I can, but I couldn't imagine what my life would have been like now. I definitely wouldn't be here at all if I was still living there, So I've been pretty blessed in that way. And, just from that, I'm sort of, I want to give back to the community that way. And and I think, if anybody wants to sponsor us, or, it's not about the money, but, we still keep in touch with all the people that we've been, that have been supporting us, whether it's, financially, whether it's emotionally, whatever it is. So it's really about, just keeping in contact. And I keep up to date with all our models. I stalk them, even our photographers, I stalk them, what they're doing. I think one photographer, he just turned 64. He has what do they call it? It's a shepherd-doodle or something, but just, it looks like a panda to me. It's just so fluffy. Yeah. And they travel all around the USA, like him and his dog. So, and it's just, it's just great just to see people doing other things and, seeing what they're up to. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Anything else you want to talk about? What you're working on? Any new projects coming up, or anything you want to tell us?
I think what have we got? We have New York Fashion Week coming up again in September. So someone found us. I get all these emails from people. I got no idea who they are, but they found us and they want us to compete for a cash prize. So we're going up against that. So that'll be exciting. I'm like, we need funding. Yay. But,
That's awesome.
Now I got to put the work in, to make that happen. So I think that's the 9th or the 8th of September or one of those days.
Okay.
And now we've got London Fashion Week, and we're looking for some sponsors if anybody is keen to do that. And then I think that's all. We do have Ireland coming up as well, so that'll be, I think that's October. So we've got an Ireland show in Belfast.
Wow, amazing! The fact that people are seeking you out—that's a pretty big thing.
I kind of do. I always have to read and Google search.
They know who you are. That's important. Awesome. Well, we're going to circulate this around the world. So sponsors out there, pay attention. So how can people get a hold of you and learn more about you?
So I'm on Instagram as well as Facebook. So it's called Beautifully Diverse Fashion. And if that's too long, I'm sure we'll put it up there somewhere. But otherwise, you can find me mostly on Instagram or Facebook. It's under Frances Helena. And that's it's like the country France with the S on the end. So, because it used to be a spelling with an I, but it's an E. But otherwise, you can find me on Facebook or Instagram, and I'll be there somewhere.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being on the show. Again, that was Frances Helena of Beautifully Diverse. So thanks for listening to Successful Minds with Patty B. Never miss an episode by subscribing. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Successful Minds with your host, Patricia Barnowski-Schneider. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and we'll see you on the next episode.